You have independent senator, former Democrat and current incumbent Kyrsten Sinema, who says, who may yet run again. She hasn't said she won't. You'll probably, almost certainly have a Republican candidate running. How worried are you about the vote getting split three ways and you and Sinema splitting that vote and losing the seat to the Republican and losing the Senate to the Republican?
Well, first of all, calling Kyrsten Sinema a Democrat is like calling Marjorie Taylor Greene.
But now we have Nancy Pelosi's gazpacho police.
A Mensa.
It's the first time the party that controls the White House actually gained Senate and governor seats since 1934. The wave that was supposed to come, the red wave, didn't actually happen. This is going to disappoint a lot of Democrats, and they're also going to feel like they don't understand. Why would you do this at a time when the Democratic Party is having a good week?
She and Manchin single-handedly kept the Democratic Party from important legislation, not only for Democrats, but for the American people. Things like infrastructure or sunsetting the corporate tax breaks Trump gave, or more important, research into science and the origins of COVID, to name a few.
Now, as you know, Jake, we've been able to do a lot of bipartisan work over the last couple of years, and I'm incredibly proud of that. And I think it's important for folks across my state and frankly across the country to say, yep, there's someone that's kind of like me. Doesn't fit neatly into one box or the other, but is standing up for their values, for what they believe in.
But of course, in comparison to other Arizona politicians like Kari Lake, she seems like Bernie Sanders.
You have independent senator, former Democrat and current incumbent Kyrsten Sinema, who says, who may yet run again. She hasn't said she won't. You'll probably, almost certainly have a Republican candidate running. How worried are you about the vote getting split three ways and you and Sinema splitting that vote and losing the seat to the Republican and losing the Senate to the Republican?
Look, I'm not concerned. We know that we're going to run the best campaign that can possibly run in Arizona, focusing on the American dream and making sure that Arizonans know that they can reach their aspirations. We're going to talk to the best and the best in all parts of Arizona. And I think someone like Kyrsten Sinema really has abandoned Arizona. So the question isn't going to be whether we're going to split the vote. We know that's not going to happen.
Well, this guy has a point. If Sinema doesn't vote with the Democrats, then what's the point? Saying you're one thing and doing the exact opposite is like trusting Lucy to hold the football. The question is, what's our real problem? Is it Sinema, Arizona, or the Democratic Party?
Kyrsten Sinema cannot win this race, whether she's in the race just head-to-head with the Republican or in a three-way race. But if we concentrate, we focus on talking to Arizonans about their everyday kitchen table issues, we're going to win, and Kyrsten's not going to be a factor in this.
And of course, Sinema is no longer a Democrat.
I've registered as an Arizona independent. I know some people might be a little bit surprised by this, but actually, I think it makes a lot of sense. A growing number of Arizonans and people like me just don't feel like we fit neatly into one party's box or the other. And so, like many across the state and the nation, I've decided to leave.
How does leaving the party change how you do your job?
Well, I don't think anything will change about how I do my job. Arizonans sent me to the United States Senate to be an independent voice for our state, and I'll continue doing that.
Independence in politics is like independence in marriage. At the end of the day, you want to snuggle with somebody. But what exactly does Sinema not like about the Democratic Party? Are their feet too cold?
But isn't that part of the problem, Congressman? She doesn't have to win. In a three-way race, she just has to lower your margin that allows a Republican to get in.
First of all, whenever someone says you can't have a three-way, I'm reminded of the old Woody Allen joke about being with two women. I like to disappoint women one at a time. And that's at the heart of this problem. What does a Democrat in Arizona look like?
She has lost a Democratic base and Democratic-leaning voters and independent voters. She doesn't work for them. She doesn't talk to Arizonans anymore. People don't feel that she's there for the right reasons, and she's spending more time, with the hedge fund managers and the private equity managers than she is with her union members. That's not going to sell in Arizona. It doesn't matter what party label she has. She has abandoned Arizona, and they're not coming back for her.
I mean, this is an odd state. Remember the AZ 1070 bill? Back in 2010, Arizona passed legislation that allowed cops to pull over people who look like they might be criminals, leapfrogging the First, Fourth, 13th, 14th Amendments like Usain Bolt at a track meet. Ultimately, the Supreme Court held states may not implement their own immigration laws, but even especially those that violated the Constitution. I bring this up because when asked about this during her primaries, Sinema looked like Lauren Beaupart in a high school algebra class.
What are you hearing on the ground in Arizona? Do you think she's going to run, or do you think she'll just retire from the Senate to spend more time with her donors?
Other than air conditioners, I have no idea what will sell in Arizona. I mean, they loved McCain, but they also narrowly defeated Kerry Lake, a denier's denier.
My question is, will you accept the results of your election in November?
I'm going to win the election and I will accept that result.
If you lose, will you accept that?
I'm going to win the election and I will accept that result.
Still battling the results of her loss, using the Trump tactic, if you keep saying the same old BS again and again, everyone will eventually die and you'll be the last one left talking.
You know, I think there's a lot of prognosticating right now. People are looking and trying to read some tea leaves. We can't focus on that. What we're going to focus on is putting together the best campaign possible, getting out there. We've already had more than 50,000 individual donors to GallegoForArizona.com. We've traveled more than 800 miles up and down Arizona, starting in Tucson and ending on tribal land in the White River Apache and Navajo land also, something that rarely is done at this stage of the campaign. And we had excitement every step of the way. So we know that if we stick to what we believe in, talking to Arizonans about the American dream, about how we're going to get them there, we're going to win this race. And it doesn't matter who the Republicans put up either.
But is it a smart idea to assume that voters in Arizona are sufficiently aware of how bad Sinema was for the Democrats?
If that changes, obviously a 50-50 Senate is a different dynamic, the one we've been living with.
Arizona is an odd combination of people who can't afford to live in California and people who think 128 degrees in August is a dry heat.
You remember when Mitch McConnell called her the most effective first-term senator I've seen in my time in the Senate? Right? And the question is, yes, as Jake said, she's voted with Biden. I think it's 93% of the time. And he asked her, like, is that going to change? And she essentially said, nothing's going to change, but we don't know.
And Sinema is, and it has to be said, not unattractive. Sadly, that goes a long way in politics. Boy toy presidential aspirant John Edwards, about as sharp as a garden hoe, came within inches of the Democratic nomination for president. And does Sinema share such lofty aspirations?
Well, I intend to maintain my position on my committees and keep doing the work that I've been doing for Arizona. So I don't think that things will change in terms of how I operate or the work that I do in the United States Senate.
So ever since Senator Warnock was reelected earlier this week, the balance of power right now is 51 Democrats, or 51 votes for the Democratic Party. That includes 2 independents, Angus King of Maine and Bernie Sanders of Vermont. But that's 51-49. What you're doing today doesn't change that. It's still basically going to be 51-49.
Well, I know you have to ask that question, Jake, but that's kind of a DC thing to worry about.
Bottom line, people who don't want to be on the left or on the right instead stand in the middle of the road. And you know what happens to them? They get run over. Thanks for watching, and remember to subscribe and follow us on YouTube at Really American.